Is now the time for Auburn to strike for JuJu Lewis? This week's episode of War Eagle Weekly. How are we doing tonight, Josh?
I'm doing okay, man. Wife and kids are out for a whole month, so I got to find some stuff to, occupy my time other than work.
Hey, man, I hear you. We just got back from vacation, and things were crazy during that time. So we got a lot to talk about tonight. Let's just go ahead and jump on in. Basically, the thing that everyone is talking about right now, JuJu Lewis. With USC having two of their top 3 commits decommitting, is now the time for Auburn to strike, or is USC going to really try even harder to hold on to JuJu Lewis?
I think USC and Lincoln Riley are definitely going to, throw out all the stops to keep JuJu Lewis in their 2025 class. But, I mean, at this point, you got to think there's something, internally happening or systemically wrong with the program for them to be losing those high-profile recruits one after the other.
Okay.
I know that Auburn may perhaps be getting a little impatient with JuJu Lewis because you can't really stick on one guy like this for super long and not really focus on any other quarterbacks in this class. So I mean, if there was a time to strike with everything you got, now would probably be the time to do it.
I mean, that's fair. My thing is I look at the fact that they're 2 defensive players, and I feel like it has a little bit less to do with JuJu Lewis. But at the same time, he is trying to go there to, I don't know, is it to be a good college quarterback and to be successful in college, or is he going to be there to win championships? And so I keep going back and forth, and I'm trying not to really have all my hopes on JuJu Lewis, because it just really feels like that wouldn't matter to someone like JuJu Lewis. I could be wrong. I don't know the kid. I haven't, we really don't know what he stands for. And so it's hard to say that, but at the same time, you go to USC, and under Lincoln Riley, it doesn't matter what the defense does, because the quarterback is going to get a crap ton of spotlight. And let's be honest, if Lincoln Riley's history is any indication, JuJu Lewis will be a Heisman finalist at some point. And so, I don't know if it matters that they, that they're 2 of their 3 top recruits decommitted, especially since they were defensive players. But at the same time, the Barner in me is just like, hey, did JuJu Lewis tell those guys something and say, hey guys, you may not want to stick around because I'm not going? And that kind of gives me hope. If there was a time, though, now I feel like is the time for Auburn to really push them hard and be like, hey, you got to be here for Big Cat. Hey, let's make it a big thing. We got to get you on board. Things are getting, tight. We need to have our quarterback on board. And so I think everything is kind of coming to a point, and this is just one of those things. But at the same time, if I'm USC, I am doing everything in my power, like you said, to not lose this guy.
Exactly. And I heard a pretty interesting perspective on the recruitment. They were saying that, JuJu Lewis, he does have the ability, to bring other high-profile offensive weapons behind him with wherever he's committed. With so many of these kids already texting him and his dad saying wherever JuJu goes, they're going to go as well. It's got me wondering, why haven't they committed to USC? So the perspective that I heard was that he can do that, but with Colorado, who's also in the mix, supposedly in his top 3 right now, he has
them in their burger.
Yeah, they're naming a burger after him. Go figure, of all things. But with Colorado, they have the pitch like, yeah, you come in, you're immediately starting next year because Shadur Sanders is going to be gone. With Auburn, they're like, yeah, you very well can start, and we already have such a young, elite receiving core that you don't have
Yeah.
to worry about rebuilding that room. Just get on the field and start winning, and the rest will come. So, I mean, like I said, they have so many wide receivers that are, their top receivers are going to be gone after this year or maybe even next. They're all their top guys returning are either seniors or juniors
Yeah.
or redshirt juniors. So the perspective is, he's going to have to work really hard to help recruit some elite wide receiver talent. Whereas at Auburn, they already have that elite wide receiver room. Yeah. So I mean, like you said, now would definitely be the time for them to, go all in on any pitch they have for him. And I would imagine that would be their leading charge.
Yeah, and you got to feel like Colorado State is, or Colorado, not State. Colorado is not even a factor because from what I can tell, again, I just got done saying I didn't know JuJu Lewis that well, but he definitely does seem like somebody that wants to have successful and productive college career, but he also wants to be available and make it into the NFL. And um, I, I just have a hard time believing that if your last name is not Sanders, if your last name is not Sanders, you're not going to be a high profile quarterback prospect for the NFL out of
I don't know.
Colorado.
I got to disagree with you because the prime factor is real, Cameron. Shadur Sanders was not a super high profile recruit. He just wasn't. And he's turned into a great pro prospect. Absolutely
Yeah,
has.
but he's
I
only
think he'll.
getting all that attention because his dad is Dion. His last name
So
is
I
Sanders.
don't.
That's why he's
I
getting
don't.
the
I
attention.
don't know about that. I don't know about that, Cameron. That's taken a lot away from an athlete that has worked very
That
hard
won
to
4
accomplish
games
what.
last year. You're right. You're right. My bad.
No, like even those 4 games he won, all the games he lost as well. I mean, he still
Yeah.
put up
No,
really good numbers. So I mean, yeah, he
yeah.
probably
I
has
was
ridden on
poking you,
his
but
dad's
I
coattails.
agree. I agree.
Yes,
He has seemed to get better as the competition
yeah,
has.
he really has. So I also know that out of Juju's camp, his dad has told Philip Dukes of On3 that they're not taking any visits to any schools that Juju isn't at the very least
Considering.
intrigued by. And Colorado, if you're not intrigued by Colorado,
Yeah.
then you're not really You're not really in the recruiting game.
Yeah. No, I can appreciate that. But again, at the same time, I just, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to see him going away from USC. I want him at Auburn, and I have some belief that he's going to be able to come here to Auburn, and if he was to flip, Big Cat is the weekend to do it. It's the
Yeah,
time to do it.
absolutely.
And hopefully the coaching staff knows this more so and already knows that he's going to. But again, dude, if USC loses JuJu Lewis and they don't have another 5-star prospect committed to them,
Someone's losing their job.
there's going to be a lot of people wanting to see some sort of production,
A
and it's
lot
going to
of
be very
unrest.
interesting to see. Yeah, it's going to be
Yes.
very interesting to see. So,
Yes.
but again, I think it's just going to be, this whole JuJu Lewis thing is just going to be interesting to see all the way through.
The feeling around Auburn right now is if they can get him on campus for Big Cat, which he already said that he's more likely going to be there for Big Cat. If they can get him on Big Cat, and it turns out they aren't able to get him to get closer to a final decision, then the feeling
Yeah.
around Auburn is that they're going to move on and target somebody else. It could help if Caleb Cunningham also comes to Big Cat. That could really help a lot, in my opinion, because he said that
Yeah.
he'd more likely be there as well. Um, I think this Big Cat
But
isn't going to be as as productive as last year, because last year was Simmons and Perry Thompson committing.
Yeah.
This year, I feel like it's more of an information grab for these recruits rather than a flip party.
We'll see. We'll see. The thing is, I don't know if Caleb Cunningham's going to be there. If Alabama's his new number one, they do their barbecue thing on the same day. I don't know. Is DeBoer doing it on the same day this year as
I
Auburn's
don't know
Big
if he
Cat
can
weekend?
cook, to be honest with you. So, but I don't know if they're going to do that. I mean, I think they'd be stupid to not do it the same weekend as Big Cat, because that was a pretty big thing for Nick Saban to always do it on the weekend of Big Cat, to try to keep the competition alive with Auburn, even though he won almost every recruiting battle against Auburn. But I mean, I have a feeling that Caleb Cunningham will be there. He's told so many outlets and so many schools that they're his new number one. I think he's another guy like Alvin Henderson, just enjoying the recruiting process and just taking it all in and saying whatever he can to stay in the headlines, which good for him. He's in the headlines.
Yeah.
He deserves it. He's earned it. But I feel like that's more than likely what it could be.
Okay. Well, only time will tell,
Yeah.
and we'll have to see. Moving right along, something happened in the last little bit by a prominent SEC commentator and someone who has built up a fairly big following in this part of the country, being the SEC. SEC Mike talking about Hugh Freeze and the way he's recruiting and the way he is trying to turn Auburn around. He had some really controversial, he said something very controversial, and so we're gonna play this for our listeners and our viewers. It's a very short clip, but this is him on the 3-man front. SEC Mike here. Let me get this out here.
Quarterback, but you don't have to go to the dollar store to get a quarterback either, Hugh. I think his reputation is overblown because he beat Alabama twice. People forget that he lost to Vanderbilt twice in that same span. I think he is not an elite coach, and I don't like the way he's building it through high school. You could do that 4 or 5 years ago. I think you have to do it in the portal these days. I think there's a good chance heading into next season, Hugh Freeze is on one of the hotter seats in the SEC.
That's such a terrible friggin' take. Such a terrible take. I mean, that's what he did his first year, was recruiting through the transfer portal. He rebuilt a lot of areas that were not even close to being properly recruited under Mr. Potato Head. And I mean, to say you got to rebuild a program strictly through the transfer portal is absolutely stupid. Unless you're a Colorado like Coach Prime that kicked off 80% of his roster. Even then, he's still recruited through the high school ranks. It's a terrible, horrible take.
He did a terrible job at high school recruiting.
He did, and
I was gonna say that Colorado isn't a success story. You can't point to them as the blueprint.
Well, I'm not calling them a success story. I'm using them as an example because of what he did. Like, if you do that, where you're kicking off 80% of your roster to the curb just so you can rebuild the program that you want, then the transfer portal would be the route that you would most immediately need to take.
I got you.
But to say to that is the new football or college football recruiting strategy, is to recruit through the transfer portal, is absolutely such a horrendous take. Stupid.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I actually took down some Colorado notes because it just you have to look at what Auburn is doing, using the transfer portal to fill in holes and to bring in depth and some star players, but where it's actually needed instead of building the roster through it, and the high school recruiting. Auburn's doing both. Hugh Freeze is doing both. Colorado. They brought in 52 transfers in 2023 and then another 42 in 2024. I'm sorry, Dion, what are you doing out there? Why are you having to bring in so many athletes every year? There was a huge exodus out of Colorado after this year because of some of the things that are going on. So outside of pointing to that, you going through and recruiting through the transfer portal more exclusively and building a team around that is just not the right thing to do. It's like paying for mercenaries. Yeah, they might be better players if you can afford the high end players, but at the same time, you're assuming that there is an endless amount of money to throw at these athletes, and then you're just having to do it again the next year or 2 years from then. Whereas high school players, go ahead.
I was just going to add to your point is like you're going to pay an exorbitant amount of money to these transfer players. You're only going to get them for a year or two. Whereas with high school recruits, you get them to commit. You build them into the player that you want them to be. So you have more time with high school players to make the team that you want, rather than plug and play type of recruiting strategy. They're just band-aids to the transfer portal. I'm not saying there's no value through the transfer portal, because we all know the value of the transfer portal.
Yeah,
we all know the value of JUCO prospects. So it's just to say it's just I don't know what to say other than the fact that it's such a horrible take.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's definitely biased because he's not saying it about Kirby Smart, who barely recruited in the transfer portal. And he's built a championship program there.
Yeah.
He's not saying it about Alabama. I guess now they're a bad example because they had to bring in so many transfers because they had so many. They have a third of their team transfer out when the boring guy got hired. But it's like everyone else has been saying, it's such a personal take. He must absolutely positively hate Hugh Freeze.
It sounds like he does.
Did something to him to cause this level of hate, because it just
he was probably overlooked in the coaching search is what it was. He probably wanted the Auburn coaching job and they didn't give him a snowball's chance. But to say that Hugh Freeze is going to be on one of the hotter coaching seats after his second year coming in of having to, literally repair a roster and a team that was not recruited whatsoever. It's just, do you know ball at all? Do you know anything about college football and how things work?
He's also acting like Hugh Freeze hasn't recruited the portal. I mean, he has the number 8 high school class so far this year. Actually, number 7 after the most recent commitment. He has the number 28 transfer. I'm sorry, the number 8 last year. The number 28 transfer portal class last year. And then that was this year. I'm getting my years mixed up. Number 4 transfer portal last year, and number 17 high school recruiting class last year. He's recruiting from the transfer portal and filling holes, like you said, where it's needed, and bringing in depth and bringing in those mercenaries and those assassins that he can use at his disposal.
Exactly. Have you heard of
this? Is the way the transfer portal is meant to be.
Sure, yeah. Not to make your entire team out of transfer portals, and like you said, he's been hitting the transfer portal hard. Have you heard of Eugene Asante? Have you heard of Kavondre Lambert-Smith? Have you heard of Percy Lewis? All those guys come from the transfer portal. It's just he's not going to go out there and take all of these 2-3-star transfer portal guys to make an entire roster out of. That's just
it's just not going to happen. Yeah,
you will set yourself up to failure. Yeah.
Yep. And I guarantee you, Dion is not sleeping well at night, knowing that he has to rebuild the roster year in and year out.
I don't know. In my opinion, I feel like Dion kind of made the right call his first year. He did it in a terrible way, but getting rid of all those players probably was the smartest move for him moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, possibly, I guess. But at the same time, he brought in a lot of 3 stars to replace those guys.
Well, I mean, it's Colorado, Cameron.
My thing is, I don't even know if he went in there and watched tape of any of those players. He just wanted them all out. He thought he could bring in. I honestly believe that he thought that he could bring in 5-star, 4-star, high-end talent all across the board. He thought that he could just could do that right out the gate. And
we
it
all
didn't
know
quite
what
work
Prime
out
thinks of
that well.
himself.
Yeah, that's true. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan of Deion Sanders, and I enjoyed watching Colorado last year until it was clear that they were going to lose, and then I kind of lost interest.
Oregon.
But after that game, and I was just like, okay, well, that was fun. It's over, and kind of moved on from there. So, well, let's get back onto our schedule of topics rather than talking about the Deion Sanders show. So we have a new hire in the coaching ranks in TJ Rushing. He was previously at Texas A&M with DJ Durkin and is making his way to Auburn as a special assistant. Josh, this screams and just instantly reminds me of what Nick Saban did at Alabama for a decade. That's what they were doing. They were bringing in special assistants that had no business being special assistants and should have been hired somewhere else as big-time coaches. TJ Rushing is not a household name by any means, like the names that Nick Saban was bringing in, but this is a guy that easily could have had a position coaching out there, or at some of the smaller schools, even a defensive coordinator position because of the job that he did while at Texas A&M. Wouldn't you agree?
I would say so, yeah.
So, I mean, this is just a great hire. I mean, I don't know what he's exactly going to be specially assisting with, but no matter what, it's going to be another voice on the field to help these kids get better and better every week, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he served as the defensive backs coach at Texas A&M. I feel like he's brought in as more of as an evaluator of prospects out of high school, and to be more of a help on the recruiting trail rather than be an actual coach. I mean, we need a lot of help in terms of recruiting, considering the recruiting aces that we lost in the offseason. So I feel like to start off as of right now, that would probably be his primary role, is to take more of a head-on approach towards evaluating and recruiting players.
I mean, that's fair. I took down some notes. He was the primary or secondary recruiter on 5 different top 100 players. So, like you said, he should at the very least be somebody that is there to help with recruiting and to evaluate somebody that DJ Durkin can look at. Maybe he's like the first guy that says, okay, I think DJ would be interested in looking at this guy. And then instead of DJ having to worry about it during the season. So maybe that's what it is. I mean, that's a good point. But either way, I think
it's just a strategic hire. It's a good one.
It is. And I think it's a good hire. Yep. Like you said, good hire. Moving right along. It came out last week that the Big 12 is looking into selling their naming rights. Let me get this tweet up here for you. We got Pete Thamel, who tweeted this out. Sources: the Big 12 is exploring selling its naming right to a title sponsor, with potential revenue being hundreds of millions over the course of the deal. It would be one of the largest commercial deals in collegiate athletics history, not including media rights. So is this the new big moneymaker in college sports, Josh?
I don't know, man. I mean, we talked briefly about this, and I've thought about it. And I just that opens the door to so many things, because money is definitely going to rule who is going to be a sponsor. And I know I brought it up as a joke. I said I can't wait to see Kansas State University be sponsored by a Jumbo Gyms lingerie and adult toy store. It's just, if they come in with a package that the Big 12 can't turn down, I feel like that's just opening the door to see those ridiculous sponsors on these big name schools. I don't know if I know you brought it up when it came to soccer, European soccer. It's just I don't know if I am cool with stuff like that. I don't know.
You know, the thing is first off, you bring up a good point with what was it, Big Gyms?
Jumbo gyms.
Jumbo gyms. My bad, Jumbo Jim. You bring up a funny point, but the thing is Michigan State's men's basketball team is it has a huge sponsor, and I think it is what's Dan Gilbert's company. I know you. I figure you know this just because you're a Cavaliers fan, but Dan Gilbert, his company is one of those big mortgage companies.
Oh, Rocket Mortgage.
Rocket Mortgage. The Michigan State Spartans are now, their men's basketball team is Michigan State Spartans presented by Rocket Mortgage is their actual name, because they actually did this. And so it's kind of already done for individual teams, but this is kind of a conference thing and becomes a big deal. And initially I kind of thought, I was like, wow, that's a lot of money that can go in it. Because like you said, I instantly thought of European soccer. And when I started following the Premier League, it made me think of Barclays. It was the Barclays Premier League. And now bear with me, but during that time, these big corporations, these big leagues actually determined that they were making less money than what they could if they had, official partners and stuff like that. You also think of, something a lot closer to home in NASCAR. And NASCAR, they were the Winston Cup for so many years. And then they kind of moved on to the, all these different cups and stuff like that. Now they're just the NASCAR Cup, and they have official partners. Now I have this graphic here to kind of show a couple of the different, examples. The Premier League, they had the Barclays Premier League was their title sponsor, but in 2016 they stopped doing that and decided to have 7 official partners. And rather than having only about $40 million a year off of the Barclays Premier League, it ended up being an additional $30 million in revenue by them splitting up and having official partners. And I kind of like the idea that they have an official bank, an official beer, and things like that. It just kind of was funny to me. And then not only that, you have, again, NASCAR. They had premier partners, and they saw a 13% revenue increase by doing this rather than having one title sponsor.
So I feel like I'd be more inclined to agree with having sponsors rather than partners, should I say, rather than one specific sponsor, because that sponsor is going to want, like you said, naming rights, and that's just stupid to me. I hate that. Doesn't make any sense.
No, I agree completely. You lose some of the identity to the league, and it becomes, like I said, I actually didn't even realize that Barclays wasn't sponsoring the Premier League until I looked up for this article. So it's been since 2016, and I associated them with the league. And so that can be a good thing and a bad thing. If you have a good a good company that you're working with, it can be a great thing. If it's not so good, then it's not going to be a great thing. But I think it's headed that way. I think we're going to have something. I don't think this is going to, it may not happen this year. It may not happen next year. It's going to happen. There is going to be a league, one of the big ones, that has a title sponsor.
Yeah, I really hope Alabama gets sponsored by Tampax. That would be hilarious.
I don't think it's going to happen.
I mean, the Tide comes once a month, and that would just work so well with Alabama.
Oh my gosh. You're lucky that our demographic is definitely 100% male right now, because you're just cruising for a bruising right now.
Jokes are jokes.
Oh my gosh. But the thing is this is coming to college sports. We've already seen, like I said, we already saw it with Michigan State. We're seeing them explore it now. I think the smarter leagues, the ones that are less desperate to generate money, let's be honest, the Big 12 is in desperate need of money because they lost their two biggest teams this year. So that's why they're looking for that influx of money. But for somebody that isn't needing that big bucks right away, they're going to take their time with this. They're going to do their research. They're going to look at NASCAR. They're going to look at the Premier League, and they're going to realize it's all about the special partners. And that's where you can make the major money. And you'll start seeing on ESPN, SEC on ESPN, you're going to see the SEC presented by such and such. And you see it throughout all of college football with the all-state special hands or the, helping hands net or something in game. It's just, you see it with broadcasters. It's not ESPN presented by Busch Beer, but they have their partners that they deal with, and these leagues are going to start dipping into that. I'm all for it. Make the money. I'm all for putting, in college now. Okay, see, this is where it gets a little hard because tradition says I don't want anything on that Auburn logo except for Auburn and the SEC
and the
patch.
Nike swoosh.
And the Nike swoosh. But outside of that, I don't want to see a team's logo. But we're seeing it more and more in the NBA. You see it in European soccer. It's a billboard, is what it is.
But I also hate it in the NBA.
It's going to happen.
I hate it.
It's going to happen.
I get it. I see where you're coming from, and I see that it is headed that direction. Doesn't mean I can't hate it because I still hate it.
Yeah. There's too much money to be made. And money drives everything, especially when you're an American.
Yep. You ain't kidding.
So I personally do think it is the next big money-making machine in college athletics. And because we've already seen media rights go through the roof and how much that's generating. SEC teams' budgets skyrocketed whenever they signed exclusively with CBS, and then it skyrocketed even more when they signed on with ESPN. And so it's the next logical way for them to make even more money, and in reality take that next step of getting away from the NCAA, not having to be partnered with this committee that's bringing everybody down.
I think that is the end game, is breaking away from the NCAA. So this could be, their first
the Big Ten or the
introduction
SEC,
into it. Yeah. So,
yep.
I see where it's going. I see why they would do it. It's just, I still don't like the idea of these national brands or national companies sponsoring specific conferences and or schools. That's just my personal opinion on it.
Yeah. Well, and with that bombshell of your personal opinion and you not liking money, who would have thought?
Now you're twisting my words, Cameron.
Very much so. I always do, and you know it.
Yes.
Tell the people where they can catch us, Josh.
You can catch us on X at War Eagle Weekly, YouTube War Eagle Weekly, and just hit that subscribe button. Leave us some comments. Let us know how you're feeling about these episodes. Communicate with us. We communicate back. Yes,
we're loving the engagement lately, and so we absolutely positively love everything that you guys are bringing to the table, and so keep it coming. We always look forward to doing these episodes, and we are going to next week. We'll have the new logo up in the intro there at the very beginning. Again, I was out on vacation, so I wasn't able to make that edit and get that change up, but we got it coming, guys. So like Josh said, subscribe, hit the notification bell, but most importantly, War Eagle, Josh.
War Eagle, Cameron.